The alarm bells rang through the Zephyrian Deep Space Station with a sound that made Captain Velthar's skin turn pale blue. He had been drinking his morning energy drink when the warning systems came alive. His long fingers moved quickly across the control panel as he tried to understand what was happening. "Report!" he called out to his crew. The bridge was filled with beings that looked like tall, thin humans, but with skin that changed colors based on their emotions. Right now, most of them showed orange patches of worry. Lieutenant Zarath looked up from her scanning station. Her eyes were large and completely black, a sign of her species' ability to see far into space. "Captain, we have detected an unknown ship approaching Sector 7. It's moving at a steady speed toward our outer border." Velthar walked over to the main viewing screen. The ship appeared as a small dot of light against the darkness of space. It didn't look like anything he had seen before. "How big is it?" "About 800 meters long, sir. It's made of some kind of metal. The design is very basic." The captain rubbed his chin. In his 40 years of service, he had seen many different types of ships from across the galaxy. Most advanced civilizations used living ships that grew rather than being built. These bioships could heal themselves and think on their own. They were powered by the life force of the galaxy itself. This new ship looked nothing like that. It was clearly made by hand, piece by piece. The metal hull was rough and simple. There were no flowing curves or organic shapes. Instead, it had sharp edges and straight lines like someone had cut it from a block of steel. "What kind of propulsion system does it use?" Velthar asked. "It appears to be some form of chemical burning, sir. Very primitive. The ship is pushing itself forward by shooting hot gas out the back." Several crew members made sounds of surprise. Chemical propulsion was something most species stopped using thousands of years ago. It was slow, dangerous, and used up too much fuel. Any civilization still using such methods was clearly very young in terms of space travel. "Sir," called out Communications Officer Hexara, "we're picking up electromagnetic signals from the ship. They're using radio waves to talk." This was even more surprising. Radio waves were among the first forms of long-distance communication most species developed. Advanced civilizations used direct mind-to-mind links or quantum communication that could work instantly across any distance. Velthar made his decision. "Begin a full scan of the vessel. I want to know everything about it. Who built it, where it came from, and what it's carrying." "Yes, sir." Zarath began working at her station. The scanning beam shot out from their station, invisible to most eyes but capable of looking through almost any material. "Scan will be complete in 10 minutes. While they waited, Velthar thought about first contact procedures. The Zephyrian Confederation had rules for meeting new species. Most young civilizations were friendly but confused when they first met other life forms. The key was to approach them slowly and peacefully. The Zephyrians were part of a large group of species that worked together across the galaxy. They had stopped fighting wars long ago. When different species disagreed, they talked until they found answers that worked for everyone. Their ships carried tools for healing and building, not weapons for destroying. Violence was something from the old days, before species learned to live together. The only weapons on Zephyrian ships were small defensive tools meant to stop space rocks or dangerous animals. The idea of fighting other intelligent beings seemed as outdated as using chemical rockets. "Captain," Zarath said, "initial scan. Results are coming in. The ship appears to be from a species we haven't met before. They look similar to several humanoid types we know, but with some differences." "Show me." An image appeared on the main screen. It showed beings that walked on 2 legs and had 2 arms, much like Zephyrians. But these creatures were shorter and more heavily built. Their skin was not smooth, but had hair growing on parts of it. Their faces were flatter, with smaller eyes that could only see a narrow range of light. "They look very young as a species," observed Dr. Colvin, the station's science officer. "Their technology suggests they've only been in space for a very short time, probably less than 100 of their years." What else can you tell me about their ship? It's definitely a warship, sir, but a very basic one. We can see weapon ports along the sides, but they appear to use simple projectile systems. Probably metal bullets fired by chemical explosions. The crew exchanged looks of amusement. Projectile weapons were what ancient civilizations used before they learned to control energy itself. Modern defensive systems could stop millions of bullets without any effort. There are also launch tubes for what appear to be primitive missiles, Zarath continued, and some kind of electromagnetic cannon on the front. Very crude design. Velthar nodded. This was exactly what he expected from a young species. They probably thought these simple weapons made them powerful. They had no idea how far behind they were compared to the rest of the galaxy. Any signs of advanced technology? Quantum computers? Bio-neural networks? Dimensional manipulators? None, sir. Their computer systems appear to use basic electronic circuits, very large and slow by our standards. We estimate their most powerful computer has less thinking ability than our coffee makers. This brought laughter from several crew members. It was not meant to be mean, but the difference was so large it seemed funny. "Sir," called out Hexara, "we're receiving a transmission from the ship. They're asking us to identify ourselves." "Do they know we're scanning them?" "It appears so. Their sensors are more basic than ours, but they seem able to detect energy beams." Velthar was impressed despite himself. Many young species couldn't detect advanced scanning beams at all. These beings, whatever they were, had at least some understanding of space technology. "What language are they using?" "Unknown, sir, but our translation computer is working on it. They seem to have several different languages, which suggests their planet isn't united yet." This was another sign of a very young civilization. Most species unified their planet before attempting serious space travel. Having multiple languages meant these beings were probably still learning to work together as one people. "Sir," Zarath announced, "detailed scan is almost complete. We should have a full report on the ship's contents in 2 minutes." "Good. Prepare a standard first contact message. Keep it simple and friendly. Let them know we mean no harm and want to talk." Velthar felt confident about the situation. These beings seemed typical of young species. Curious, but primitive, probably amazed to discover they weren't alone in the universe. The Confederation had helped hundreds of species like this over the years. The process was always the same. First, contact, followed by careful introduction to galactic civilization. The young species would be given basic technology and education. Within a few generations, they would become productive members of the galactic community. "Scan complete, sir," Zarath announced. "Downloading data now." "Excellent. Let's see what our new friends are really about." Velthar had no idea that in the next few minutes, everything he thought he knew about young civilizations was about to change forever. The beings on that primitive-looking ship were about to teach the Zephyrian Confederation something new about the universe, something that would make them question everything they believed about peace, progress, and the nature of intelligent life itself. The scanning data flowed into the Zephyrian computer systems like water filling a bowl. At first, everything seemed normal. The ship's basic structure appeared simple: metal halls, sleeping areas for the crew, food storage, and engine rooms. Captain Velthar watched the information appear on his screens and nodded with satisfaction. "Just as we thought," he said to his crew. "A basic warship from a young species. Nothing we haven't seen before." But then the computer began digging deeper into the ship's data files. The artificial intelligence system that helped the Zephyrians understand other technologies started making sounds of confusion. Strange beeping noises filled the bridge as the AI tried to process what it was finding. "Sir," Lieutenant Zarath said, her voice sounding worried, "the AI is having trouble understanding some of the ship's contents. It keeps asking for confirmation on the data." "What kind of trouble?" "It's finding weapons that don't match anything in our database. The computer thinks there might be an error in the scan." Velthar walked over to Zarath's station. "Show me." the screen filled with images of the human ship's weapons storage areas. At first glance, they looked like normal military equipment. But as Velthar looked closer, he began to feel confused. "Are those missile warheads?" he asked. "Yes, sir. But according to the scan, they're not normal explosive missiles. These warheads contain something the AI labels as nuclear fusion devices." Dr. Colvin looked up from his station with surprise. "Nuclear fusion? You mean they're using the power of stars as weapons?" "That's what the data suggests, sir." A cold feeling crept up Velthar's spine. Nuclear fusion was the same process that powered suns. Most civilizations learned to use this power for energy production, but using it as a weapon was almost unthinkable. The amount of destruction would be enormous. "How many of these nuclear weapons does the ship carry?" According to the scan, 43 warheads, sir. The bridge fell silent. 43 weapons that use the power of stars. Each one could probably destroy an entire city. Why would any species need so much destructive power? "Sir," Zarath continued, "there's more. The AI has found chemical weapons storage. These chemicals are designed to kill living things." "What kind of chemicals?" "Nerve gas, sir, and something called biological weapons. The computer says these are diseases that have been changed to be more deadly." Velthar felt his skin turning a deep blue color, which in his species meant fear. Chemical weapons were banned by every civilized society. In the galaxy, they caused terrible suffering and could kill millions of innocent people. As for biological weapons, using diseases as weapons was something so evil that most species never even thought of it. "There has to be a mistake," he said. "Young species don't develop such horrible weapons. They focus on exploration and building." But the AI continued its report. More and more weapons appeared on the screens. Kinetic bombardment systems designed to drop heavy objects from space onto planets. Plasma cannons that could melt through any known metal. Something called cluster bombs that spread smaller explosives over large areas. "Sir, communications." Officer Hexara called out, "I'm seeing references to something called scorched earth tactics in their military database." "What does that mean?" "According to their files, it means destroying everything useful in an area so that enemies cannot use it. They burn crops, destroy buildings, and poison water sources." The horror kept growing. Dr. Colvin discovered files about something called enhanced interrogation techniques. When the translation computer processed these files, it became clear that humans had developed scientific methods for torturing information out of prisoners. "This cannot be real," Velthar whispered. "No intelligent species would create such things." But the evidence kept coming. The ship's database contained detailed studies of psychological warfare, methods for breaking the minds of enemies without even fighting them. There were plans for weapons that could affect the weather, turning nature itself into a tool of war. Most shocking of all were the historical files. The computer discovered that these beings, who called themselves humans, had been fighting wars for their entire recorded history. Not just small disagreements, but massive conflicts that killed millions of their own people. "Sir," Zarath said, her voice barely above a whisper, "their database contains information about something called World War II. According to these files, over 70 million humans died in this single conflict." 70 million? Velthar could barely believe it. They killed 70 million of their own species? "The files suggest they have fought many such wars, sir. And each time, they developed new and more terrible weapons." The AI continued processing. Data, and each new discovery was worse than the last. Humans had created weapons that could poison entire planets. They had developed methods for destroying space stations by ramming ships into them. They had even built weapons designed specifically to cause maximum suffering rather than quick death. "Captain," Dr. Colvin said, "I'm looking at their medical files. They have detailed information about combat drugs, chemicals that make soldiers stronger and less afraid, but also more aggressive." "They drug their own soldiers?" It appears so. And, sir, they have surgical techniques for implanting weapons directly into their bodies. Velthar staggered backward. These humans were not just violent. They were willing to turn their own bodies into weapons. What kind of species would do such things, sir? Hexara reported. I'm finding references to other ships. This vessel appears to be part of something called the Third Fleet. Their communications suggest there are hundreds of similar ships. The captain felt his legs grow weak. Hundreds of ships like this one. Hundreds of vessels carrying nuclear weapons, chemical weapons, biological weapons, and things even worse. And if each ship represented the military power of this human species, then the galaxy was facing something unlike anything they had ever encountered. There's something else, sir, Zareth said quietly. The ship's database contains theoretical weapon designs, plans for weapons they haven't built yet. What kind of plans? Devices that could tear holes in space itself, weapons that could make entire star systems disappear. And, sir, something they call reality bombs that could unmake matter at the atomic level. Velthar had to sit down. These humans had not only created weapons of unimaginable destruction, but they were actively planning to create even worse ones. They had turned war into a science and destruction into an art form. Captain, Dr. Colvin said, I think we need to contact the Confederation Council immediately. This is far beyond a normal first contact situation. You're right, Velthar agreed. But first, I want to understand one more thing. Zarath, scan their cultural database. I want to know what kind of society creates such weapons. As the AI dove into human cultural files, the answers it found were almost as disturbing as the weapons themselves. Humans did not just accept war, they celebrated it. Their entertainment was filled with stories of conflict and violence. Their heroes were warriors and soldiers. Even their games involved fighting and conquest. Sir, Zareth reported, according to their cultural files, humans have a saying, if you want peace, prepare for war. Velthar shook his head in disbelief. In Zephyrian culture, the saying was the opposite. If you want peace, prepare for peace. The humans seemed to believe that the only way to avoid fighting was to become so good at fighting that no one would dare challenge them. As the scan completed, one final piece of information appeared on the screens. The human ship was not trying to hide any of this information. In fact, their databases suggested they were proud of their military capabilities. They saw their weapons and their ability to wage war as achievements to be celebrated. Captain, Hexara said urgently, we're receiving another transmission from the human ship. They're asking why we haven't responded to their first message. Velthar stared at the communication console. How could he respond to beings who carried the power to destroy planets and the will to use it? How could anyone in the galaxy respond to a species that had turned violence into their defining characteristic? Sir, what should I tell them? The captain closed his eyes and tried to think. In just a few minutes, everything had changed. The galaxy was no longer a safe place of peaceful cooperation. Somewhere out there, beyond the borders of civilized space, was a species that could end everything they had built, and that species was now asking for a simple conversation. Captain Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the UNSF Retribution, watching the data flow across her screens with a small smile. The alien scanning beam was thorough. She had to give them that. Her ship's sensors had detected it the moment it touched their hull, just as she had expected. "Ma'am," called out Lieutenant Rodriguez from the sensor station, "they're doing a deep scan. They're looking at everything. Weapons, crew quarters, computer systems, the works." "Let them look," Chen replied calmly. "Make sure all our systems are open to their scan. I want them to see exactly what we're carrying." "Yes, ma'am. Should we send them our weapons manifest as well?" "Not yet. Let them find it themselves. It'll be more interesting that way." Chen had been preparing for this moment for months. Humanity had known about the galactic community for much longer than the aliens realized. Earth's deep space monitoring stations had been tracking their signals and studying their technology. The decision to make first contact was not accidental. It was carefully planned. "Commander Torres," she called to her second-in-command, "are our cultural database packages ready?" "Yes, Captain. We have everything prepared: military history, tactical manuals, combat footage, and the special files you requested." "Good. As soon as they finish their scan, we'll give them something to really think about." Chen walked to the main viewing screen and looked out at the alien space station. It was an impressive structure, grown rather than built, with flowing organic curves that suggested advanced biotechnology. These aliens had clearly mastered the art of working with living systems rather than against them. But Chen also noticed something else. The station had almost no visible weapons. Its defenses seemed to rely on shields and barriers rather than offensive capabilities. These aliens had apparently never learned the hard lessons that humanity had been forced to learn over thousands of years of conflict. "Ma'am," Rodriguez reported, "they're accessing our historical databases now. I think they're getting their first look at human warfare. Perfect timing. Begin preparing data package Alpha 7. The Europa War files, ma'am? Among others. I want them to understand what humans are really capable of when we put our minds to it." Chen remembered the Europa War well. She had been a young officer then, fighting against the AI rebellion on Jupiter's moon. The robotic forces had seemed unstoppable at first, with their perfect calculations and tireless metal bodies. But humanity had won through tactics that no computer could predict, tactics that required creativity, adaptability, and a willingness to sacrifice everything for victory. "Captain," called out Communications Officer Park, "they're sending us another message. They want to know why we haven't responded to their first contact attempt." "They're probably too shocked to think straight right now," Chen said with amusement. "Give them a few more minutes to process what they're seeing. Then we'll talk." The truth was, Chen knew exactly what the aliens were discovering. Human warships were not designed to hide their capabilities. They were designed to be a clear message to anyone who saw them. "We are prepared for anything, and we will do whatever it takes to protect what we love." "Ma'am," Torres said quietly, "are you sure this is the right approach? These aliens seem peaceful. Maybe we should start with diplomacy, instead of showing them our weapons." Chen turned to face her second-in-command. Torres was a good officer, but he hadn't lived through the Salvation War like she had. He hadn't seen what happened when humanity was too trusting, too eager to believe that others shared their values. "Commander, how long have humans been trying to achieve peace through diplomacy alone?" "Thousands of years, ma'am." "And how well has that worked?" Torres was quiet for a moment. "Not very well, Captain." "That's right. Peace through strength is the only kind of peace that lasts. These aliens need to understand that humans are not victims or easy targets. We're partners who bring something valuable to the table." "And what's that, ma'am?" "The knowledge of how to fight when fighting is necessary." Chen had studied the alien civilizations extensively. Their technology was impressive, their societies were advanced, and their commitment to peace was admirable. But they had also grown soft. They had forgotten that the universe could be a dangerous place, full of threats that could not be reasoned with or talked out of their destructive goals. "Ma'am," Rodriguez announced, "they've found the Salvation War files." "Excellent. Make sure they get the complete records, battle footage, tactical analyses, casualty reports, and most importantly, the final victory documentation." The Salvation War had been humanity's darkest hour and greatest triumph. When the dimensional portals had opened and the demon-like entities had poured through, every expert had said Earth was doomed. The creatures were immune to most weapons, could tear through steel with their claws, and seemed to feed on fear itself, but humans had adapted. They had learned to fight beings that should have been impossible to defeat. They had developed new tactics, new weapons, and new ways of thinking about combat. In the end, humanity had not just survived the invasion, They had driven the creatures back to their own dimension and sealed the portals forever. "Captain," Park reported, "I'm receiving emotional stress indicators from the alien station. Their biometric readings suggest high levels of fear and confusion. That's normal. They've probably never seen anything like human military doctrine before." Chen understood their shock. Most galactic civilizations had evolved beyond the need for serious warfare. They solved their problems through technology and diplomacy. The idea of a species that had turned conflict into a precise science would be completely foreign to them. "Ma'am, should we prepare the defensive files as well?" "No, not yet. Let them absorb what they've seen so far. We don't want to overwhelm them completely. The defensive files would have to wait. Those records showed how humans had learned to protect civilian populations during wartime, how they had developed systems to minimize casualties while maximizing effectiveness. They showed the other side of human military thinking, the side that fought not for conquest, but for protection. "Captain," Torres said, "incoming message from Earth Command. They want to know our status. Tell them we're proceeding according to plan. First contact is going exactly as expected." Chen had spent months developing this strategy with Earth's best military minds and xenobiologists. They had studied every piece of information about the galactic community, looking for weaknesses and opportunities. What they had found was a civilization that was advanced but unprepared for serious threats. "Ma'am," Rodriguez announced, "the aliens have stopped their scan. They appear to be analyzing the data they collected." "Perfect. Now we give them the rest of the story. Prepare data package Omega-1 for transmission." "The cultural integration files, ma'am?" "Everything. Military history, tactical doctrine, defensive strategies, and our proposal for galactic security cooperation." Chen walked back to her command chair. This was the crucial moment. The aliens had seen what humans were capable of in terms of warfare. Now they needed to understand why humans had developed these capabilities and how they could be used for the benefit of everyone. "Open a communication channel," she ordered. "Channel open, Captain." Chen spoke clearly and calmly, using the universal translator to convert her words into the alien language. "Zephyrian vessel, this is Captain Sarah Chen of the United Nations Space Force Ship Retribution. We detected your scanning beam and wanted to make sure you had complete information about our capabilities." She paused for a moment, letting that sink in. "We come in peace, but we come prepared for anything else. We understand that our military technology might seem shocking to your civilization, but we want you to understand something important. Every weapon on this ship, every tactic in our database, every strategy we have developed exists for one purpose only: to protect innocent life." Chen nodded to Torres, who began transmitting the data package. "We are sending you additional information about human civilization, including our history of protecting others and our desire to contribute to galactic peace. We believe that true peace is not the absence of conflict, but the presence of those who are willing and able to prevent conflict from harming the innocent." She took a deep breath before continuing. "We know that our methods might seem extreme to you, but we have learned through bitter experience that the universe contains threats that cannot be reasoned with. We offer our knowledge and our protection to any civilization that shares our commitment to defending life and freedom." Chen sat back in her chair and waited for a response. She knew the aliens were probably having emergency meetings right now, trying to decide how to handle this unexpected situation. But she also knew that eventually they would realize the truth. In a universe full of unknowns, having allies who were prepared for the worst-case scenario was not a liability. It was the most valuable asset possible. "Ma'am," Park announced, "we're receiving a response. They're asking for time to consult with their leadership." "Tell them to take all the time they need," Chen replied. "We'll be here when they're ready to talk." The emergency meeting began 3 hours after the human transmission ended. Representatives from 17 different species gathered in the Great Council Chamber on the capital world of Zenthera Prime. The chamber itself was a work of art, with walls that shifted color based on the emotions of those inside. Right now, those walls showed deep purples and reds, colors of fear and confusion. Captain Velthar stood at the center of the chamber, still shaking from what he had witnessed. Around him sat the most important leaders in the galactic community. The Ethereal Council of the Vorthari, masters of energy manipulation, the hive queens of the insectoid collective, whose species thought as one mind. The ancient archivists of the crystalline empire, beings of pure thought who had existed for millions of years. All of them were struggling to understand what they had learned about humanity. "Explain to us again," requested High Counselor Zixtha of the Vorthari, exactly what this human ship was carrying. Velthar activated the holographic display. Images of human weapons filled the air above the council table. 43 nuclear fusion warheads, each one capable of destroying a large city. Chemical weapons designed to kill all life in vast areas. Biological weapons that use diseases as tools of war. "This cannot be accurate," rumbled Queen Vastera of the Insectoid Collective. Her voice came from millions of smaller beings speaking in perfect unison. "No intelligent species would create such things." "The data has been verified by our best scientists," Velthar replied. "But that's not even the worst part. Their cultural database shows that humans have been fighting wars continuously for their entire recorded history. Not border disputes or resource conflicts, but total wars where entire populations are destroyed." Dr. Kyleth, the Confederation's leading expert on primitive species, stepped forward. She was a Zephyrian like Velthar, but her skin showed the pale colors of deep thought rather than fear. "I have spent the last day studying their historical records. What I found challenges everything we thought we knew about intelligent evolution." "Explain," ordered ancient archivist Morden, whose crystalline form glowed with curiosity. "Most species develop intelligence as a way to cooperate better. Smarter beings can work together more effectively, solve problems as groups, and build peaceful societies. But humans appear to have developed intelligence primarily as a tool for warfare." Dr. Kyleth activated her own display. It showed human history as a timeline filled with conflicts. "They have been fighting each other for at least 10,000 years, not just with simple weapons, but with increasingly sophisticated methods. Each war teaches them new ways to fight the next one." "But surely," interrupted Counselor Lixara of the Peaceful Unity, "they must have periods of peace between these conflicts." "They do, but they use those peaceful periods to prepare for the next war. They study their previous battles, develop new weapons, and train their military forces. They call this peacetime preparation." The chamber fell silent as the council members absorbed this information. The idea was completely foreign to them. Galactic civilizations used peaceful periods to focus on art, science, and spiritual development. The concept of using peace to prepare for war seemed backwards. "There's more," Dr. Kyleth continued. "Humans don't just fight other species. They fight themselves constantly. Their planet is divided into separate groups called nations that compete with each other. Sometimes this competition becomes violent." "They fight their own kind?" Queen Vastera's voice carried undertones of horror. "But that would weaken the entire species." "That's what we would expect, but the opposite seems to be true. All this fighting has made humans incredibly adaptable. They have learned to survive in any environment, use any available resource, and overcome seemingly impossible odds." High Admiral Tepvor of the Stellar Defense Force leaned forward. His species, the Krillians, were among the few in the galaxy who still maintained any kind of military force, though it was mainly used for protecting ships from space debris and natural disasters. "What about their technology? You said their ships were primitive." "That's where things become very confusing," Velthar admitted. "Their technology is primitive in some ways, but surprisingly advanced in others. They haven't developed biotechnology, or quantum consciousness like we have, but their weapons technology is far ahead of anything we've seen. How is that possible?" because they've focused all their intellectual development on learning how to fight and survive. While we were learning to grow ships and communicate with pure thought, they were learning to split atoms and harness the power of stars for destruction. Dr. Kyleth brought up new images. Look at this weapon they call a kinetic bombardment system. It's essentially a metal rod dropped from space. Simple in concept, but the engineering required to make it accurate and effective is remarkable. The council members studied the images with growing unease. The human weapons were not elegant or beautiful like galactic technology, but they were clearly effective. Honored archivists, Admiral Tepvor addressed the Crystalline Empire representatives. Your people have existed for millions of years. Have you ever encountered a species like this? The ancient beings conferred among themselves in flashes of colored light. Finally, Morden spoke. Only once, in the early days of galactic civilization, there was a species called the Devourers, who lived only for conquest and destruction. They consumed entire star systems before they were stopped. How were they stopped? The entire galaxy united against them. It took 1,000 years of warfare to drive them into extinction. A chill fell over the chamber. The implication was clear. If humans were anything like the Devourers, the galaxy might be facing its greatest crisis in millions of years. But wait, protested Counselor Lixara. The human captain said they come in peace. She claimed they only fight to protect innocent life. That's the most confusing part of all, Velthar said. Their cultural database shows that humans do indeed fight to protect others. Many of their wars have been fought against oppressive regimes or to save civilian populations. Dr. Kyleth nodded. It's a contradiction that makes no sense to us. They have the capacity for incredible violence, but they also show remarkable compassion. Their military history is filled with soldiers who died to save others, including enemies. Perhaps, suggested Queen Vastera, they are not one unified species but several different types that look similar? No. The genetic data is clear. They are all the same species. Somehow humans have developed the ability to be both incredibly violent and remarkably peaceful, depending on the situation. High Counselor Zixtha stood up, her energy form flickering with uncertainty. We need to make a decision. Do we treat humans as a threat to be contained or as potential allies? What are our options? Asked Admiral Tepvor. We could attempt to quarantine their space, preventing them from spreading into the galaxy, Dr. Kyleth said. But that might be impossible. The human captain mentioned hundreds of ships like theirs. We don't have the military power to contain a force that size. What about a preemptive strike? Suggested one of the younger council members. The chamber erupted in shocked gasps. Preemptive attacks were against every principle of galactic civilization. Absolutely not, declared Morden firmly. We will not become the very evil we seek to prevent. Then what do you suggest? Admiral Tepvor asked. We study them more, Dr. Kyleth replied. The human transmission included additional data about their culture and values. Perhaps we can understand their true intentions. And if we discover they are a threat, then we prepare ourselves, but we do not strike first. That would make us no better than the Devourers. Velthar activated another display. There's something else we need to consider. The humans mentioned something in their transmission about protecting the galaxy from threats that cannot be reasoned with. They seem to believe the universe contains dangers we don't know about. What kind of dangers? Their database includes references to something called the Salvation War. Apparently, they fought beings from another dimension that invaded their world. Beings they describe as immune to conventional weapons and motivated only by destruction. The council members exchanged worried glances. Interdimensional threats were theoretical possibilities that most civilizations preferred not to think about. If such beings exist, Admiral Tepvor said slowly, then perhaps having allies who specialize in warfare might not be such a bad thing. That's exactly what I'm thinking, Velthar agreed. Maybe humans aren't a threat to the galaxy. Maybe they're the galaxy's immune system, the part of galactic civilization that handles problems too dangerous for the rest of us to deal with. High Counselor Zixtha looked around the chamber. We need to vote. All in favor of extending peaceful contact with the humans? One by one, hands and appendages rose around the chamber. Even those who were afraid of human capabilities recognized that making enemies of such a powerful species would be far worse than trying to make them friends. Unanimous, Zixtha announced. We will offer the humans membership in the Galactic Confederation. And if they accept? Asked Queen Vostera. Then we learn from each other, Mordun replied. They can teach us about survival and protection. We can teach them about cooperation and peace. And if we're wrong about their intentions? 6 days after the emergency council meeting, Captain Velthar found himself aboard the human warship Retribution. The experience was unlike anything he had ever encountered. Walking through the metal corridors, surrounded by the sounds of machinery and human voices, he felt like he was inside some ancient war machine that had come to life. Captain Sarah Chen met him in what humans called the briefing room. It was a simple space with metal tables and chairs, very different from the flowing, organic meeting spaces of Zephyrian ships. But Velthar noticed something interesting. The walls were covered with images of Earth, showing beautiful landscapes and peaceful cities. Captain Velthar, Chen said, extending her hand in the human gesture of greeting. Thank you for coming. Aboard. I hope our ship hasn't been too shocking for you. Velthar accepted the handshake, noting the surprising gentleness of Chen's grip despite the obvious strength in her hands. It has been educational, Captain Chen. Your vessel is very different from what we're used to. I imagine it is. Please, sit down. We have a lot to discuss. As they settled into their chairs, Velthar studied the human captain more closely. Chen was smaller than he had expected, but she carried herself with a confidence that suggested she was very comfortable with. Command! Her eyes were alert and intelligent, constantly watching and evaluating. Your council has made us an interesting offer, Chen began. Full membership in the Galactic Confederation. I have to admit we weren't expecting that. Your people weren't expecting it either, Captain. The debate was intense. Chen smiled, and Velthar was surprised by how warm the expression seemed. I can imagine. We know our military capabilities probably seemed frightening to civilizations that have moved beyond warfare. That's putting it mildly. Some council members thought you were another devourer species. Devourers? An ancient race that lived only for conquest and destruction. They were eliminated millions of years ago. Chen's expression grew serious. Captain Velthar, I want you to understand something very important about humans. We don't fight because we enjoy it. We fight because we've learned that sometimes it's the only way to protect what we love. Your transmission mentioned protecting innocent life, but your weapons could destroy entire planets. Yes, they could. And that's exactly why we built them. Not to use them, but to make sure no one else would dare use similar weapons against us or our allies. Velthar found this concept difficult to understand. You build weapons of mass destruction to prevent destruction? It's called deterrence. If everyone knows you can respond to any attack with overwhelming force, they're much less likely to attack in the first place. It's actually a form of peacekeeping. But what if someone calls your bluff? Chen's expression hardened. It's not a bluff, Captain. That's the point. Everyone has to know that we're absolutely willing to use these weapons if necessary. That knowledge keeps the peace. Before Velthar could respond, an alarm began sounding throughout the ship. Chen immediately stood up, her relaxed demeanor instantly replaced by sharp military focus. Captain Chen to the bridge, came a voice over the ship's communication system. Priority message from Earth Command. Excuse me, Captain Velthar. This might be important. They hurried to the bridge, where Chen's crew was already busy at their stations. The main viewing screen showed an image that made Velthar's skin turn pale with fear. It was a massive fleet of dark, angular ships unlike anything in the galactic database. "Report," Chen ordered. "Ma'am, long-range sensors have detected an unknown fleet approaching the Outer Rim colonies. 300 ships, all heavily armed. They're not responding to communication attempts and they're destroying everything in their path." Chen studied the tactical display with calm professionalism. "Time to Outer Rim?" 72 hours at maximum speed, ma'am." "And the nearest Confederation? Defense forces?" 4 days away, Captain," Velthar said quietly. "Our ships aren't designed for speed in crisis situations." Chen turned to her communications officer. "Get me Earth Command, Priority Alpha." Within moments, the screen showed the face of Admiral Rodriguez, commander of Earth's Space Forces. "Captain?" "Chen, what's your status?" "Admiral, I have Captain Velthar of the Zephyrian Confederation aboard. We've just received word of an attack on the Outer Rim colonies. Unknown fleet, 300 ships, destroying everything they encounter. Admiral." Rodriguez nodded grimly. "We're tracking them too. The entire Third Fleet is being mobilized, but we might not reach the colonies in time." "Sir," Chen said carefully, "request permission to assist the Confederation defense efforts." "Captain," Velthar interrupted, "you don't understand the danger. These ships are using weapons we've never seen before. They're cutting through our defensive barriers like they don't exist." Chen looked at him steadily. "Captain, this is exactly what humans are good at, dealing with threats that seem impossible to handle. But there are 300 of them. And there are 12 human warships in this sector. Trust me, those are better odds than they look." Admiral Rodriguez spoke from the screen. "Captain Chen, you are authorized to provide all possible assistance to Confederation forces. Make contact with their fleet commanders and coordinate our response." "Yes, sir." As the communication ended, Chen turned to her crew. "All hands, battle. Stations. Set course for the Outer Rim, maximum speed. Contact the other ships in our task force. Tell them we're going to show our new friends what human warfare looks like." Velthar watched in amazement as the human crew moved with practiced efficiency. There was no panic, no fear, just calm professionalism. These beings had clearly done this many times before. "Captain Chen," he said, "I should contact my superiors and coordinate our forces. Of course, use our communication system. It's faster than yours." As Velthar began sending messages to the Confederation fleet, he couldn't help but notice the difference in tone between the human and alien communications. The Confederation messages were filled with worry and requests for additional support. The human messages were brief and confident. "Enemy contact in 70 hours. Recommend standard dispersion pattern. All units prepare for engagement." "Captain Velthar," Chen called to him, "your people are going to see some things they've never witnessed before. I want you to understand that everything we do, every tactic we use, is designed to end this threat as quickly as possible with minimum casualties." "What do you mean?" "Human warfare isn't about honor or glory. It's about winning fast and going home safe. We use whatever methods work, and we don't fight fair if we can help it." Velthar felt a mix of curiosity and concern. "What exactly are you planning?" Chen smiled, but this time the expression was not warm. It was the smile of a predator, anticipating the hunt. "We're going to teach these invaders the same lesson we've taught every other aggressor in human history, that attacking innocent people is the biggest mistake they could ever make." Over the next 3 days, as the human and Confederation fleets raced toward the Outer Rim, Velthar witnessed something that changed his understanding of warfare forever. The humans didn't just prepare for battle. They studied their enemy, identified weaknesses, and developed specific strategies to exploit those weaknesses. They shared their analysis freely with the Confederation forces, teaching alien commanders tactics they had never imagined. More importantly, they showed how superior technology could be defeated by superior strategy and the willingness to take calculated risks. When the battle finally came, it lasted only 4 hours. The alien invaders, who had seemed unstoppable against Confederation forces, found themselves completely outmaneuvered by human tactics. Every time they tried to use their superior weapons, the humans were somewhere else, hitting them from unexpected angles. The enemy fleet was destroyed completely, with minimal casualties among the defending forces. After the battle, as Velthar stood on the bridge of the Retribution looking at the wreckage of the enemy fleet, he finally understood what humans brought to the galaxy. "Captain Chen," he said, "I owe you an apology. When we first scanned your ship, we thought you were primitive, barbarians. And now I understand that you're something the galaxy has been missing. Guardians who are willing and able to face the darkness so the rest of us can live in the light." Chen nodded. "That's all we've ever wanted to be, Captain. The galaxy's immune system, like you said, will handle the threats that can't be reasoned with, and everyone else can focus on building a better future. The Council will want to formalize our alliance immediately." "We'd be honored, but remember, we're not conquerors or rulers. We're just the people you call when the monsters show up at the door." Velthar looked out at the stars, knowing that the galaxy had just become a much safer place. Not because the threats had disappeared, but because there were finally beings willing and able to stand against them. "Welcome to the Galactic Confederation, Captain Chen." "Thank you, Captain Velthar. We're looking forward to a long and peaceful partnership." And in the depths of space, the human warships took their positions alongside their new alien allies, ready to face whatever dangers the universe might bring. The galaxy had found its protectors, and the protectors had found their purpose.